Welcome, everybody. And as I mentioned, if you weren't clicked on yet earlier, I'm Peter Shumlin, one of the directors of Putney, and delighted to be here to talk to you today about Oxford academia. The format today is that we're going to talk specifically about Oxford. I have the pleasure of introducing my friend, Professor James Basker. Before I do, I just want to mention that if you go to the website and you look at Oxford academia, you know that we also have Oxford academia at the American University Paris and Oxford Academia at the University of Siena. We'll be talking about those two programs in upcoming webinars. We'll be sure to blast you with them. We're going to really focus on Oxford today. I'll just say a quick word about both. We've arranged the 2-week units so that students can mix and match this year. So we have a lot of applicants that we've accepted who might be doing Oxford for the first 2 weeks and then doing Paris for the last 2 weeks, or doing the University of Siena for the first 2 weeks and then moving to Oxford to study 2 seminars there. So, we always feel that 4 weeks is really critical. We do a significant discount for students that do 4 weeks. Happy to talk to you about that. But the dates are organized in such a way that you can mix and match the Oxford programs. Parents often ask, well, if I do that, how do I get my student from Oxford to Paris or from Paris to Oxford? We arrange all of that. We take care of that. There are other students who are doing it, so everybody goes together. It's not that you have to work out those. So not a logistical challenge, great opportunity. Very briefly, American University of Paris is an extraordinary campus right in the center of Paris. Professor Basker has been running programs there for years. Putney's been running programs in Paris for 71 years, to be exact. And it's truly an extraordinary campus, extraordinary program. Students actually enroll at the university, at the American University. The program in Siena, at the University of Siena was founded in 1240. Think about that. It's one of the oldest and most prestigious universities in Italy. It was really, these programs always have a story. We don't just sort of go out and say, hey, let's go to Siena. In the case of Siena, for various reasons, I worked very closely with the chancellor of the University of Siena when I was governor here in Vermont, and with what is the equivalent of the Secretary of State of Italy. Their governments change very quickly. And together, they are really orchestrating many of the details of this program with all kinds of amazing contacts, not only in Siena, but throughout Tuscany. Florence is only 45 minutes away. So we'll talk more about those shortly. And we'll send you, as I mentioned, an update for those webinars. So now we really want to focus today on Oxford. And I want to tell you, I have the pleasure of introducing the director of this program, James Basker, who is a great friend of mine and a colleague of us here at Putney. And I'll just say a little bit about his background. Just technically, if you don't know much about him, and you're about to see a little bit of him, Jim did his undergraduate work at Harvard, where I also do some teaching currently. But he then got both his master's and his PhD at Oxford. And I think it's fair to say that after spending many years at Cambridge and Oxford, but particularly at Oxford, Jim probably, if he could have done it all over again, I'm speaking for him in this case, would have gone to Oxford or Cambridge right from the beginning and stayed there. Having said that, it's his love. He is currently, and has for many years, been a professor at both Barnard and Columbia. He's the president of the Gilman Lehrman History Institute in New York, which educates over 28,000 students all over the world in American history and history. He has taught at Oxford and has run programs there for almost 40 years. His passion, in addition to all I don't know how he does everything he does, but in addition to all the amazing things that he does, is getting students really excited about being a part of Oxford, understanding how it works, being challenged academically and obviously personally by the growth that happens there, and making the magic happen for American high school students. I think embedded in that is his desire to have more students from this country and around the world end up studying at Oxford or Cambridge when they go and get their degrees. Having said that, Jim is also, you will learn, in my view, the most accomplished historian that I've ever met, and I've met a lot of historians. He's an inspiring professor. He's an inspiring educator. He's one of the smartest people I've ever known. And the obvious question is, well, why Putney? Putney was founded by my parents over 71 years ago, and we had extraordinary programs they did at both Oxford and Cambridge. Jim then founded his own organization about 30 some years ago called Oxbridge Summer Program. And he directed those so well and made such a magical program that many alumni would call us and say, what's the difference between what Putney does at Oxford and what Jim Basker is doing? And we couldn't, with a straight face, say, well, our programs are all complicated. The reason for that is that Jim, as you're about to see when you meet Mihaela, it's a level of faculty that the rest of us just, why? Because he's able to get his colleagues, his friends, his former comrades in teaching and education to come to Oxford and make the magic happen for high school students in situations where, frankly, because of their credentials, they might be a little hesitant at first to teach high school students. When they get there, they learn they love it. They stay for many, many years. And the magic of Jim's program has always been the faculty, the guest lecturers, the people that he can bring to his program that inspire, that educate, that change kids' lives. So we kind of got out of the Oxford general program that Jim ran. Several years ago, he transferred that to a larger educational organization because he obviously has a lot to do at Barnard, at Columbia, and all the rest of his life, so that he could just go in and direct the programs, make the magic happen for faculty and students. That didn't work out. And we got together, Putney and Professor Basker, and created Oxford Academia so that Jim could keep the magic happening. So that's really the basis of the program, why we're so excited about it, and why it's such an honor to introduce to you today, my friend, my colleague, a person I admire tremendously, and so will you, Professor James Basker. And I'll let you introduce Mihaela.
Well, Peter, thank you very, very much. And I right away want to thank Mihaela for taking time from her life to be on here today. And as Peter indicated, working with colleagues like Mihaela and watching them work with students is one of the great joys of my life after all these years. And you're going to hear from her in a few minutes. But let me take a couple of minutes to introduce the program to everyone who's taken the time to tune in today. And I'm going to explain that photo on the left too, which is quintessentially Oxford. We're going to unpack that photograph to show how that is the meaningful fabric of life there. As Peter said, I have been bringing students to Oxford now for more than 30 years in these very exciting summer programs. My aim is always to create, an extraordinary educational experience, potentially a transformative one for kids at the high school stage of their careers. And Oxford is the perfect place for that. Many of you who've tuned in have seen already the basics that we have two-week sessions back-to-back in July. And you've seen the structure where students can enroll in their first choice of major and their second choice as minor as seminars over the 2 weeks. We encourage kids to choose as their major the seminar that they're really passionate about throwing themselves into. There are no prerequisites whatsoever except interest in that subject. Those majors will be 6 mornings a week for 3 hours, 9 to 12, with some workshop or exercise work outside those hours. The minors will be 3 afternoons for 2 hours, so they're a smaller introduction to a second subject. There is no pigeonholing students in terms of those subjects either. If you go to the website, you'll see 15 different choices, but a kid is not a scientist or only a humanist or only a creative writer on our program. They could take medicine as a major and creative writing as a minor. They could take Mihaela's course in architecture and sustainability as a major and war and world history as a minor. Whatever the two intellectual interests are for any given student, they build their own curriculum, if you will. And so that's kind of the overview of the program, and anybody at Putney in the office there can talk you through what spaces are left in each of those majors and minors and how to apply and enroll and so forth. But I want to say a little bit more about the essential elements and the nature of the experience in Oxford. And I tend to break it out into 3 elements that make the magic, as Peter says, happen. One of them is simply the place itself. And you're just getting a hint of it in that photograph. But Oxford is an 800-year-old university. It's been the seat of kings since the Norman conquest. The Normans built their first tower in London, the Tower of London, their first fortress, then at Windsor Castle, and the third one up the Thames River was in Oxford. And so students today can visit the ruins of the 1071 castle in Oxford. They can go to plays in the grounds of that castle, which is magic, to see, for example, Macbeth performed on the grass on one of the ramparts there. Next to that castle stands an even older Anglo-Saxon mound from the 8th century, from which you can see a view of the whole city. So the history is there in every street, in every brick of every building. And it's not a university physically shaped like what we're used to in America, where we think of one unified campus. Oxford grew in pieces, and you see some of those pieces amalgamated there in that medieval city center view that we're looking at. There are today 38 different colleges who make up Oxford. There are 2 of them in this photograph, plus some institutional buildings. The church with that spire rising from it is St. Mary's, the university church, dates from the 13th century. In that grassy plot around it are the graves of some of the church fathers. So one of the fun things to do is to actually go there for tea and sit in that little graveyard and think about the past, think about philosophy, think about the meaning of life. That university church, which is still a functioning church today, used to be the place where all of the university ceremonies took place: matriculation, graduation, public programs, and so on. But in the Middle Ages, the students were rowdy, and they used to have obscene skits and obscene satire. So the church fathers were always unhappy about that, and eventually forced the university to build a separate building called the Sheldonian, which is now the official ceremonial center for the university, built in the 1660s. And it was, by one of those chances of history, the first major architectural breakthrough by Christopher Wren, who thought of himself as a mathematics don, but submitted a proposal for this Roman-style theater, which all of our students will experience, and is one of the most extraordinary buildings in all of Europe. I know that Mihaela will talk about it with her students in the summer. But it's a spectacular place. The building you see with that's cylindrical in shape there is, by Oxford standards, a relatively modern building. That's the Radcliffe Camera, of course, modeled on a classical model of ancient Rome. It was built in the 1750s, so it's only 250 or 270 years old, which is still relatively modern for Oxford. It's a library today. Under that grass you see around it, there are 6 floors of books going underground. And in fact, you're looking at the center of the university library system, where there are millions of books stored now. They're so overflowed, the stacks in the libraries, that this underground storage is what they use. In the foreground, the 2 quads we're looking down into are part of All Souls, one of those quirky colleges in Oxford from the 1400s. It has no undergraduates. Instead, it's a college which serves only graduates and honorary fellows, senior scholars from all over the world. It's a kind of medieval think tank. And then across the way, where there are little white construction buildings, is Brasenose College from the 1300s. So this gives you a sense of the physical space. There are greener spaces where Christchurch Meadows are and the university parks are. And then within each of the colleges, there will be those grassy lawns that are called quadrangles. So for our students, they will be living in Oxford colleges, and they will have a true Oxford experience, because they'll be living in a college that has its own dining hall, its own bedrooms, its own chapel, its own green space, in some cases, its own art collection, and so on. And they'll have events in that college, but they'll also go to their seminar or their minor seminar or to other cultural events in other colleges where we live, other colleges where our teachers have their home base. And I hope Mihaela will talk a little bit about her experience of colleges in Oxford as well. But I want to say also about Oxford, the place, its magic in history is about a place that people for 800 years have been coming from all over the world to find themselves, to share ideas, to create new ideas. And it is a place that throughout history people have come and transformed themselves. I mentioned Christopher Wren, who thought of himself as a mathematics and engineering don, became the greatest architect of his time because of the accidents of his experience there. John Locke, one of the great philosophers in the whole of the European tradition, came to Oxford to train as a physician. He wanted to be a doctor, but he also became this colossal man of ideas who developed avant-garde ideas about human psychology, about human society, and the rest of it. My favorite author, Samuel Johnson, came to Oxford to be a classics don or perhaps a school teacher. Well, he failed at both of those things, became a dropout, went on to be the greatest writer of the 18th century in London. And you can think about people like that throughout the course of Oxford. This is what I want for our students, a chance to come to a place where people who have all different fields of knowledge in their mastery, but also have the imagination and the passion to think of new fields and to reinvent themselves. Those are the kinds of teachers the students will have. So the second major element, and probably the most important, are the faculty that we draw together. Oxford has always, from the first moment I went there as a graduate student, thrilled me with the quality of the human beings it brings from all over the world. There's no subject in the world that there aren't multiple geniuses, masters of in Oxford. And we draw as many of them as we can into our program to teach. And they teach subjects that are beyond the usual curriculum. And some of them, as you've seen from our syllabus, are subjects that combine unexpected fields, psychology and AI, or war in world history, or Shakespeare and the creative imagination, which might not be just theater, but also poetry and fiction and even architectural spaces. So I want to pause at this point because I'm talking about these teachers and I'd love to tell you about more. To turn to my colleague and friend, Mihaela, who is part of also a kind of genius couple, because her husband, Luca, is also a teacher for us and just absolutely revered as a teacher of psychology and AI. But Mihaela, would you say a little bit about yourself, your own experience at Oxford, some of the teaching you do, and what brings you back, sharing the excitement that you do with students every summer?
Thank you, Jim. Let me just start with the fact that what brings me back is purely selfish, because although Oxford University is over 800 years old, it still doesn't have an architecture department. So this is one of my long-term goals in life, is to just talk to the Vice Chancellor and to perhaps, for the first time in so many hundreds of years, actually start a new department at Oxford. We will see if we can do that. But until then, the only architecture course that is actually being taught is being taught by me at Putney. It all started actually with Professor Basker in 2014. I founded the Oxford School of Architecture, and I have been using the same similar syllabus since then. And it has been an absolute blast, and it has been such an inspiration even for me as a scholar, because it became an inspiration for my book, which combines neuroscience, because I'm also a cognitive scientist and a neuroscientist, with architecture. So I'm still kind of like working on the name of this new discipline, but it's definitely the overlap of the two. So in my program, students will kind of learn that architecture is not this subject that you think that you need some talent for, because sometimes people, they steer clear from subjects such as art or architecture because they think that they need to draw and they need to know in advance how to draw, but that is absolutely not true. So talent is overrated. What we actually value in Oxford is curiosity. So it's curiosity and interest, and Jim was talking about this earlier. The only prerequisite for my students is just this enormous excitement and curiosity. This is literally all we need. So when we have that, we can just kind of like work our way through everything. My students will learn how to draw. Actually, it is a skill like any other, and perspective drawing is such an important skill. Just think about it. You can just visit any place in the world and you can kind of like do a quick sketch. It's such a beautiful thing. And as human beings who have functioning brains, this is how we actually think. The pencil, we have been using it for thousands and thousands of years, and it is actually a part, scientifically speaking. I'm just putting on my neuroscientific hat on. It is an extension of our mind. So in a way, an architect's laboratory is the drawing. And this is why we will be concentrating on that in some portions of the course. In other portions of the course, we'll be concentrating on architectural history. Well, we will learn about Christopher Wren and the Sheldonian Theater. We will kind of try to look at buildings critically, but also to read them, to kind of like read what the architect was trying to say, but also, and this is what Victor Hugo was talking about in The Hunchback of Notre Dame, what the society of the time was trying to tell us. So if you just for a second look at the image in front of you of Oxford, the aerial view, you can see the church that Professor Basker was talking about. And this church is important because it actually tells us not as much. I mean, sometimes you think about, like, I don't know, Gothic architecture, and you think if you see it, you will know something about Gothic architecture per se, but that's not the most important message that we will try to convey through our course. The important message is what the society of the time was trying to tell us. And I would say that it was conveying the emotion of fear, perhaps, of awe, of reverence, all these different things. So in a way, the built environment tells us about the bodies and the minds of humans who use them more than anything else in the world. And this is why being an architect, and this is how I'm going to close, is the most important job in the world. Thank you.
And there's no greater pleasure in the world than to walk around a place like Oxford with Mihaela as she teaches you to understand the relationship between human beings and the built environment and the history of that relationship that is manifest in all those forms. And don't get her started on the neuroscience behind aesthetics and spatial interpretation as well, because she can take you down those brainwave paths at the same time. We're going to open up for questions, I think, in due course, but I wanted to say a word quickly about the third element. I mentioned the magic of this place, Oxford, which is so overwhelming. Thomas Hardy, who never went to Oxford, only visited it, built an entire novel around the magic of Oxford called Jude the Obscure, which for those of you who like 19th century English novels should go and read it, because there are just mystical passages there where he walks through the streets imagining the souls and the spirits in all of these buildings. But it's a magical place. The faculty, I can't say enough about, most accomplished professionals and scholars, people who could be writing their books or mounting their exhibitions, who take their time from the summer to share the passions they have for their subjects and share them with kids for whom they model these passions and share their wisdom and bring it out in the students. But the third element I mentioned is the student body. One of the things that keeps us all coming back is the quality of the students and to be immersed in the experience that they're having. As you can all imagine who are listening to this webinar, these are not the kids who think the best thing in the summer is to go lie on the beach or play a round of tennis. These are kids who have aspirations, who dream beyond the curriculum in their schools. They may be locked into that conveyor belt curriculum that is the pre-college experience in so many schools. And I'll be giving little workshops about thinking about college from a professor's point of view and the whole application process, but trying to get beyond those pressures. This is an opportunity for students to explore new subjects that are beyond the curriculum at home, to explore being in a foreign environment, to explore the challenges of living in a university community, of being engaged in conversations with serious scholars to get a sense of themselves, and to be around other kids like themselves who've come because they have intellectual curiosity, because they want to do more than what their school curriculum can offer at home, because they want to explore the possibilities of life that might be professional. What's it like to be a doctor? What's it like to study law and do those things that come even at graduate school level? Sometimes it's about passion for a particular subject that they just want to explore for the first time or want to do more of. And at the same time, it's a chance to connect with other students from all over the United States, and there will be some students we think from abroad as well. Kids who share their passions and for whom learning is fun. And there's great joy in that. They find out that kids are fun and not just nerdy, but they really have a joy in learning and discovering new subjects and discovering new dimensions of themselves. So the student body, I have to say, is an incredibly important part of this process. And that's why all of the courses are very small. They're seminar sized because the interactions with the students are terribly important and part of the learning experience. And speaking of learning, the teachers all have different styles. They all do different kind of project-based experiential learning with the students. I'm going to turn back to Mihaela in a minute to ask her about some of the things that she said students. But one thing we don't have final exams. We don't have long research essays. We don't use the conventional tools of the conventional conveyor belt school pressure scene. We do things that are student-centered. So there will be in-class debates. There will be games. There will be collaborative projects. There will be in the business class, instead of being lectured at about business, students will invent their own new business and write a business plan for it and explore it and present it. So a great deal of what the students do is to identify, they're exposed to many different areas of the subject, and then they choose an area they want to dive into and master it themselves, and then find the voice or find the project that will express that. And I do want to turn back to Mihaela for a minute. If you just talk, Mihaela, about, a typical day for a student in your class. Are they locked in your classroom for 3 hours, or what do you do with them?
Right. Thank you, Jim. So definitely not locked in the classroom. And I was mentioning studio work before and drawing. So you have to imagine that this actually happens most of the time outside. So even the lawn behind the church in the picture that we can all see is one of the locations that we use, because it offers such a wonderful view on the Radcliffe camera, and you can actually sketch it really quickly. So we go outside not only for drawing, but also for model making, where we make conceptual and abstract models of architectural forms outside. We set up exhibitions outside. Previously, we also used kind of like the outside environment of Oxford to make our debates livelier. For example, if the debate is about public transport versus individual transport or public spaces, we would simply just move outside, and this is where we would hold the debate. Similarly, project-based work. Let's imagine group work. For example, you have 5 students working on a project, which is a makeshift homeless shelter. We would actually go outside and try to make a model of that and kind of like find locations for it. So it's all very Oxford-based. And even sometimes when we go to outside of Oxford for to see a castle or a manor or something outside of Oxford, I usually provide them with floor plans of the place, so we can do a kind of like a short exercise in reconstruction. So for example, you can imagine the face of one of the lords that actually came out to greet us, and my students were sketching over a floor plan, and I asked them to make it into a nightclub. Obviously, this was just an intellectual exercise in architectural functions of a space, but they were actually quite amused and surprised.
I'd like to see that nightclub come into being. So beyond students' individual classes, whatever the major and minor they work in, we have a host of cultural activities, special walking tours, guest speakers, things to enrich the student experience that go on every hour that the student is not in their seminar. These are by and large not required. They're electives and options that students can avail themselves of. But we'll have a visiting professor of moral philosophy, for example, my old friend Jeff McMahon, who was a Rhodes Scholar in my time and was invited back to be the senior professor of moral philosophy at Oxford. He presides a little bit like Dumbledore in the tower over the gate at Corpus Christi College, and I hope we'll visit him in his lair. We're going to talk with Adam Smith, who's the head of the professor of American history, although a British guy, who's the head of the Rothermere Institute. And we're going to look at how a British university approaches the subject of American history, one of its most popular subjects, but that cross perspective between the former British Empire from which America carved itself out and now is closely allied. But we're going to look at that. We have many Rhodes Scholars on our faculty teaching for us, and I'm on the board of the Association of American Rhodes Scholars. So we have access to Rhodes House, and we're going to have a panel discussion where kids are going to learn, what does it mean to be a Rhodes Scholar, and who are they, and how did they become Rhodes Scholars, and what are they doing for the world? Because Oxford has more than 200 Rhodes Scholars in residence at any given time, one of the great talent pools in the world. Some of them will be teaching for us, but we'll get to meet others as guest speakers and when we visit Rhodes House. And I could go on and enumerate one institution after another: the Ashmolean Museum, the Pitt Rivers Museum, the Bodleian Library, phenomenal institution. And I'm meeting soon with the director of the Bodleian Library in early March to talk about how we can arrange a visit for our students to the Bodleian, not only to see some of their oldest treasures, but actually perhaps to work with a printing press in the 18th century style to learn what it was physically to produce books in the 1700s. Oxford has 1 million of these opportunities, so there is a kind of buzz that goes on all the time. But students will also have an opportunity over meals and sometimes in the quiet of the college courtyard in the evening to talk with each other, to have a classic sort of exchange of views, get to know each other, kick around new ideas. That happens when you're working with your classmates on a project, but it also happens with the kid you meet who might be your roommate or the one who lives next door to you, or just the ones you meet in the cafe or on the college lawn one night as you talk about the subject you're interested in and how you think about the future. It's really an extraordinary experience for the right kind of student. I think there's nothing in the world like it. So I don't know if Rebecca or anybody at Putney has questions from the group, and I'm happy to go ahead and talk about some of the questions I've experienced in the past. I see that one has come through on the chat.
Let me just interrupt you for a minute, Jim, before you get to questions, and just say, really what makes this program so magical, as I said right in the beginning, is Mihaela and Jim and all the people just like. And I was just listening to Jim's classic modesty. And so I just want you to know that, I should have mentioned this, Jim is a Rhodes Scholar. He serves on the board of Rhodes House. When he says, things like, we're going to arrange for students to go to Rhodes House and really understand what Rhodes Scholars contribute to the world, well, he's helping to select the Rhodes Scholars every year. And really what makes this program so magical is that Mihaela and Jim and so many others have inside connections at Oxford University that make it possible to expose Oxford academia students to things that they would otherwise never do. So you don't just kind of roll into Oxford and get the inside view, meet with the director and others at Rhodes House. You don't just kind of roll into Oxford and sort of get the behind the scenes understanding of the magic that makes the place happen. That's what Basker and his team have been so good at over the years. So I want to interject.
I think Mihaela has something to add. She raised her hand.
Take it away, Mihaela.
Thank you, Rebecca. I just wanted to add something from from the point of view of faculty. This is not, and I know most of the faculty, and they've become really good friends. And I know that for us, this month is not just a job. It's not just a summer job. This month is entirely consumed by Jim's program. So the entire July is kind of reserved for this kind of inspirational endeavor that we take on together with our students. And just to illustrate, a really, really important part of the program for me is this kind of like a few nights per month that we have where the faculty actually presents exciting ideas in an entertaining way in kind of like these short TED Talk style talks. And this is extremely, it's just entertaining. It's like an evening activity. And every time I'm just blown away and amazed by the colleagues that I have. Seriously, it's just, I always like prepare my talk and I think, oh, this is really interesting. I will be talking about Gothic architecture and horror movies. Like, that's fun. But then I'm just floored by what everyone is talking about, seriously. And I always, and this is really important because Luca and I, we started doing this, we actually bring notebooks. This is how we get inspired. We just listen to our colleagues and it's just amazing. And all the students are there, which is weird because it is their free time. They should be getting bubble tea in the center of Oxford or anything like that. No, they get the bubble tea and they actually come to the auditorium. It's just amazing. It's just what a kind of program it is. So I personally, I cannot wait.
I'd love to add to that. Just to mention some of the teachers who shine in our program. Rodina Pichi, for example, who as an undergraduate at Oxford worked as an administrative assistant in our program years ago. Well, she's now gone on to medical school and a very accomplished physician working in London. She's been working in the emergency room all through the COVID epidemic. So she's had that absolute horrible, stressful experience of working, facing COVID at its worst. But she's the most cheerful, upbeat person in the world. She models what it is to be a caregiver, a dedicated physician who loves teaching. And so she gets the kids involved in a hands-on way in what it means to be a doctor. Or if you take Rob Schessel, who is a businessman and graduate of the Wharton School at Penn, and does not, as Mihaela indicates, he doesn't need this teaching in the summer. He's been building businesses as an entrepreneur all over the world. He's got big businesses in Czechoslovakia, also in China, a very large growing business in China. But he saves this month every year because he loves working with the students. So the students aren't learning about the theory of business. They're learning about what it is to be a successful entrepreneur in a hands-on way. Or if you take the man who's going to teach war and world history, Dr. Max Lau, he teaches a course that's interdisciplinary up and down the ages. Now, he's a specialist in the Crusades, the medieval Crusades, and he'll make that subject fascinating. How did these armies of Christians muster in Europe and then march thousands of miles to go to the Middle East and build castles and fight wars? But he'll be covering everything from ancient Greece and Rome to World War II, as he looks at in the interdisciplinary way that war is a subject that isn't just about battlefield tactics, it's about politics, it's about economics, it's about human psychology. So as Mihaela says, one of my favorite things as a senior scholar myself is getting to listen to all these brilliant young scholars who have these new ideas, these new combinations of ideas, these new creative projects. One of our faculty members, April Pierce, who was doing her PhD at Oxford on T.S. Eliot, founded the Oxford Writers Workshop. And it became the Oxford Writers House, where students, undergraduates and graduates, could go to nurture their writing careers. There is no creative writing major at Oxford University. She effectively created that world. We're hopeful she'll be a guest speaker this summer. But these are the people. And as you can hear from Mihaela and from some of the others that I'm mentioning, these are the people we want our students to have access to. And have a chance to get excited about and find in themselves the creative possibilities that would make them like these scholars in the future.
We do have
Thank you, Mihaela. Thank you, Jim. That was great. I know Rebecca has questions. I'm watching the clock, so I'll be the timekeeper.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I just wanted to mention there's only a few questions at this time. So if you do have questions for any of these fine panelists, just throw them in the Q&A and I will read them. But to get us started, during the architecture program, are the kids able to do a portfolio for their college admissions?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, it's quite a portfolio building course because we do models daily almost. So we have materials and we do these like short kind of like exercises making abstract conceptual 3D models. And then we photograph them and we exhibit them. And they're always thematically organized, and the materials are always kind of like organized and chosen in such a way that the finished model actually looks professional, like it's from a first year student studio. So it's both, so the case is similar to both models and drawings as well. So the only thing that we're not covering is computer drawings. So we're doing everything by hand. We're doing perspective drawings and models and everything. It's only by the end of the course that we can kind of like do something like that. But usually, yeah, this is enough for the portfolio.
Amazing, great. I don't know I know we don't have the engineer seminar instructor here, but maybe Jim, could you speak a little bit about the engineering?
I will. And the basic approach in engineering, as it is in many of the subjects, including law and medicine, it's not focused down simply on one field of engineering in terms of, civil engineering, bridge building or something. It looks at engineering as a whole horizon of possibilities. It is everything that humankind does with tools in the physical environment. So there will be an introduction to all of the different fields as far as possible of engineering, whether it's biomedical engineering or civil engineering or mechanical engineering, but every place that, the tool maker man designs tools that change life. in some way. So it's not at all a training course. It's not a kind of, okay, you'll emerge from this and you can go to work designing bridges, but you will emerge from this having a sense of what all the possibilities are. And there may be some that you never had any sense existed, and then tested some of your creative ideas in different ones of those areas. Where are there engineering needs? Where's the problem that needs an engineering solution? And is that in medicine? Is that in, you know, biomedical engineering, or at the mechanical stage or the biochemical stage? But so many ways to think about this subject and to draw out students in their engagement with it going forward.
And big concepts like carbon sequestration and saving the planet. Without engineering, that's not going to happen. We got to do it fast. So it's a really broad.
How to solve the world's problems. Absolutely.
These are getting specific about seminars, so I just want to throw out there that if that you want to call, we can definitely answer really specific questions. But maybe, Jim, you know, for war and world history, does it cover the Cold War at all, or does it just go through World War II?
Well, it will cover the Cold War as students wish to have it covered. So one of the things that also happens in many of our classes is it isn't a dictation by the professor or the leader. They don't come in and say, well, I'm a specialist in medieval history, so we're going to do medieval history. They come into the class and say, war and world history has many different touchdown points, whether it's in the classical past or whether it's in the current world. Indeed, sadly, we may be witnessing a war breaking out in the Ukraine, even as we're speaking right now. So teachers, on balance, strike a balance between bringing in topics that they propose to be teaching, which are in their syllabus from the past, or also are part of their expertise, but they also, from the first day on, gather ideas from the students. What are the areas that you really expect or would hope to learn about? Because obviously we have 2 weeks. We can't cover everything, but we want this to be an interactive blend of the things that I bring personal expertise in as a teacher, and you have particular interest in to learn about. And that's the way the syllabus evolves in every single course. And so I can promise that any student who comes wanting to do Cold War history or wanting to do the War of 1812, that will emerge on the syllabus because the teacher will be taking those suggestions from the students and integrating them.
Just one thing we should add to just so that background that we haven't mentioned, these seminars are teeny, right? We only accept 12 to 15 students. These aren't huge seminars, lectures, whatever. We really have, the beauty of this is that you have genius like Mihaela to yourself and a handful of other students. It's not a traditional freshman college course where you're sitting in a chair.
Could you elaborate on the activities that occur outside of seminars and life at Oxford?
Well, I'd have to take about an hour to list the possibilities there. I've been coming back to Oxford for 40 years, and I still haven't done everything that I'd like to do. There are lots of museums and places I haven't been. We have activities directors, and there will be deans and other administrative staff who make sure there's a variety of activities on offer every hour of the day, and that they are different. So if there's a sports offering at 4 o'clock to go play tennis or go to play soccer, there will also be a walking tour of Blackwell's, the greatest academic bookstore in the world. There will be opportunities to have expert guidance as an introduction to the Ashmolean, which is one of the oldest museums in Europe, founded in the 1680s, an art collection, but also material culture that's there. The Pitt Rivers Natural History Museums, where you can do science, musical instruments museum. But there will also be experiential activities, theater. Oxford has a flourishing theater scene in the summertime, some of it experimental, some of it classic. See Shakespeare plays performed in a medieval garden or in a medieval castle, or to see an avant-garde play that's performed by students who've written it the term before. There will be concerts, medieval concerts. It might be evensong at Christchurch to hear choral music sung in a medieval style, but it might be a more modern musical concert at the Sheldonian or the Holywell Music Rooms. But students will have a rich array of these activities because We want students, no matter what their academic specialties or priorities, to have a full smorgasbord of the cultural exposure that you can have in a place like Oxford with 800 years of culture and 800 years of resources that have been accumulated. It's an inexhaustible place to take one human imagination and have it stimulated beyond what you can imagine. This is it.
Jim hit that right out of the park. The only thing I
Yeah.
should mention is that structurally, there's a way that this happens. What is that? There's a group meeting almost every day where faculty, directors, Jim, everybody get together.
Uh-oh.
And that's where they pop up and make announcements about all kinds of things. And students get actively involved. So a student might pop up and say, hey, we just found out about this amazing cricket championship that's going on. We're starting to figure out cricket. We're helping to organize it. Who wants to come? And someone else will get up with a totally different idea, like, we're just going to do a coffee house tonight of our own faculty and student talent. You're invited. And if you've got talent, we need you. So there's all kinds of great stuff happening. The students are very involved in helping make the magic happen outside.
Amen.
Pete, to riff off of that, could you talk about the dorms and if there are roommates and how dorms are assigned, that kind of thing?
Certainly. So as Jim mentioned, Oxford is so different from American universities. And not everybody realizes that, if you were to apply to Oxford, you wouldn't apply to Oxford University. You would apply to, for instance, Jim studied at Christ Church. He would apply to Christ Church, and Christ Church would either take Jim Basker or reject Jim Basker. They're in effect their own little communities. And how many of them are there, Jim? 30 something?
38 colleges, yeah.
So the point is, they're very small. These are teeny little, they've been there for hundreds and hundreds of years. It's not like, BU, right? Where you have thousands and thousands. There were 200, 300 students, these little jewels of historic brilliance. So having said that, the beauty of our program is that we scatter ourselves across 3 colleges so that you can not only eat, live, and enjoy your own college, but that you can really get exposure to others. Why is that so important? It's important because these colleges are walled. Jim, historically, why are they walled?
Well, some would say it was to keep danger out, but others would say it was to keep the students in. That's a little bit of both.
It was probably a little of both. The point is, it isn't like showing up at an American campus. You just kind of go wandering around. You don't get in unless the porter greets you at the porter. You have a very specific person you're going to see there, and you can't just sort of go wandering. Hey, let's go hit all 38 colleges. So the point is, the beauty of our program is our majors live at their main college. We live in almost entirely singles. There are some doubles. Many of them are en suite, means that your bathroom is attached to your room. There are some where the bathroom is down the hall, and we're obviously separated by gender. And these are extraordinary, beautiful places. So that's the story, is that most people will be in singles. If you want a double, let us know and we'll try and make it work. Structurally, you live with your major and other majors at the college. So in other words, all of the people in your major will be living with you. You'll get up, go to breakfast, go to your major, which don't forget meets 6 days a week, including Saturday morning. So you don't have to go running across Oxford, the city of Oxford, which I would call a town, but they call it, to go find where your class is. And we all gather in Oxford for lunch, a numerous array of great eating places. And we don't include lunch in tuition. It's the only thing that's not included because students want to go into town and be with their friends and eat in these great little places. And then you go to your minor, and we try to put your minor at a college you don't live at, so that you really get to be exposed to that as a student, as well as someone enjoying the community. And then we have all kinds of things going on in the afternoon, as you mentioned, evening, all kinds of things, weekend, all kinds of things going on. And obviously our dinners, occasionally you'll eat with your group at your college. Very often we eat as an entire group at one of the colleges, or an entirely different location that we want you to be exposed to within the Magic Drop. So I hope that helps to answer that.
Could I throw in one detail too? Over the years, I know that sometimes students have a friend from school or a friend from camp or a cousin, but someone that they particularly want to room near or even room with. And I know that the team at Putney will make careful note of those applications in the file. So if there is somebody on the call today who has a friend from school is thinking of applying, or they think they might want to be sure to room near, make sure that the folks at Putney know so that we can try to make that happen.
And we can't guarantee it, but we'll try hard because obviously we.
It depends on, yeah, depends on the seminar that they're choosing, but we can definitely advise on how that could happen.
And you'll spend a lot of time together no matter where you live.
Right.
Couple of quick questions. Is there Wi-Fi available for the students?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
High speed.
Perfect. Can you handle food allergies on this program?
Absolutely. Oxford's does that with their students. We deal with it, not only food allergies, but vegetarians, vegans, you name it, we do it.
All right, that is about it. It sounds like Jim needs to organize a college crawl of Oxford.
Yes, he will.
Well, there's an element of that. One of the things I often do in the evening is informally take a group of students on a walkabout, because Oxford, which is a very busy town in the daytime, in the evening after 7, it's still light, and it's light till 9:30 or 10. And it's a nice quiet time to take a small group walking. So I do that almost every night. But speaking of walking tours, one of the things I also like to do, and there may be some parents on this call, is on arrival day. I can't promise you that Mihaela is available because she may be working, but I would certainly be hanging out where the students are checking in. And if there are parents arriving with their kids to check them in, please remind me that I promised I'd give you a walkabout while you're there, because you shouldn't come all the way to Oxford and not get, at least a taste of the place. And I love taking people around. I can show you 4 pubs that were alive in 1500 if you want.
And by the way, it's not just opening day. I've spoken to a lot of parents already who said, hey, we might come midway through the program. And I say,
Right.
Let us know, because you definitely want to have the Basker experience. And when you become part of the Putney family, Oxford Academia family, you get a ticket to that. Hey, I just want to close by saying a word about admissions. We have more applicants for our programs than we've ever had in our 71 years. There's huge pent-up demand because of all the disappointment the students have survived, and parents, by the way, over the past couple of years as a result of it. So if this is something that you're excited about, don't think about it. Hit the apply now button, fill out the form, make your $700 deposit. We will then write back to you in admissions and say, yes, we have space, or no, we don't. Let's talk about other options. If we say, yes, we have space, which we hope we will be able to do, then we will ask you for the emails of 2 teachers advisors that know you well at school. You have to write an essay. We put all that together. If you're accepted, away we go. If you're not, we credit your $700 credit card and ask you to think about it in another year or whatever. Having said all that, I just want to close by saying this is an extraordinary program. And in this world of technology and everyone cramming so much into their schedules, it's not uncommon for students to think 2 weeks is a really long time. Then they get to Oxford, and by day 8 or 10, they're going, what was I thinking? I don't want to go home. I want to stay the second unit. And we will try very hard to make that work. But at that point, we're probably out of space. So we give a significant tuition fee discount. I don't know the number, but it's big, like $23, $24. You stay for the entire month. You get to choose 2 majors and 2 minors. And I just want to alert you to that, because this flies by. You get absorbed with your new friends, your new professors, your new life, and suddenly it's over, and you wish that you were going a month. So just want to make that clear. But regardless, whether it's 2 weeks or 4, get moving. Don't think about it. We're swamped. We'd love to have you apply, but well, team.
Pete, one more question. When is the application deadline?
There is no application deadline. We will go to wait lists once we have filled the program. The first unit is getting very close to full. The second unit has more space. If you want to do both, hurry. But the bottom line is, we have a rolling admissions process, so there's no specific deadline. The deadline, frankly, is that you'll end up on a wait. So something you want to do or you're excited about, call us here at Putney anytime. I'm happy to talk to you about it. You know, I have a lot of things going on in my life, but I love this program. So does Jim. So does Rebecca. We're here to help. Call us and we can answer your individual questions that you don't dare to ask on a webinar.
I should have said that too. I'm happy to have a Zoom call with a family or a couple of students who have questions that are very particular to what we're doing in the program. I love doing that because I want kids to know what they're getting into. But as Pete says, it's extraordinary in terms of the experience that kids have on this program.
Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Mihaela. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Rebecca. And thank you, parents and students, for joining us. Have a great long weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, you guys.